I sat in my favorite armchair, upholstered in dark green leather, and leafed through the pages of the local newspaper. Outside the window of my house in a quiet neighborhood of Louisville, dusk was slowly falling, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and purple. At 72, I still had a sharp mind and keen eyesight, which helped me notice details that others overlooked. The house I had bought 30 years ago was my fortress, spacious, comfortable, with high ceilings and large windows that let the last of the daylight into the living room. This house had seen joys and sorrows. It remembered the laughter of my late wife Elizabeth, Tyler's first steps, family celebrations, and quiet evenings alone with a book. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts about the political news and my plans for tomorrow. I wasn't expecting any visitors, especially at this hour, but the insistence of the ringing made me realize that someone really wanted to get in. The doorbell rang not once but several times, as if in a hurry or afraid that I wouldn't hear it. I slowly got up from my chair, feeling a slight heaviness in my legs after sitting for so long, straightened my shirt, and headed for the front door. The parquet floor creaked under my footsteps. The old house had its quirks, but I loved these familiar sounds. Through the peephole, I saw familiar figures. My son Tyler and his wife Chloe standing on the doorstep with broad smiles on their faces. "Hi, Dad," Tyler exclaimed as soon as the door opened. "We decided to stop by and see you. We hope we're not disturbing you." I looked closely at my son. Tyler looked a little tense, despite his apparent cheerfulness. His dark hair was neatly styled, his suit was impeccably ironed, but something in his manner betrayed an inner unease. He shifted from foot to foot, his gaze darting around, never lingering on one spot for long. Next to him, Chloe clutched a small Louis Vuitton handbag, a birthday gift from Tyler as I remembered, and kept adjusting the blonde curls falling on her shoulders. She was wearing an expensive coat, which I was seeing for the first time, and elegant high-heeled shoes, clearly not designed for long walks. "Of course you're not disturbing us. It's so nice to see you," I replied, stepping back and inviting them in. "Come into the living room. Would you like tea or coffee?" Chloe was the first to step into the house, looking around as if she were seeing the place for the first time. Her gaze lingered on the antique vases, the paintings on the walls, the massive oak table in the corner, the old Persian rug I had inherited from my father. I noticed how carefully she was studying the surroundings, and it seemed strange to me. After all, she had been here dozens of times during the 8 years she was married to Tyler. Usually, she would walk into the house without paying much attention to the details of the interior, preoccupied with conversation or her own thoughts. "You look great," Chloe said, kissing me on the cheek. "You haven't changed at all since last time. You're just as lively and energetic." Her kiss was cold, formal, lacking the warmth I remembered from the early years of their marriage. Back then, she seemed genuinely happy to see me, interested in my life, telling me about her work at a marketing agency. Now there was a certain tension in her behavior, as if she were playing the role of a caring sister-in-law. Tyler walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa, his hands resting on his knees. His wife sat down next to him but kept looking around. I took my usual place in the armchair and looked closely at the unexpected guests. The air was filled with the light scent of Chloe's perfume, an expensive French brand that I recognized by its smell. Tyler looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes that I hadn't noticed during their last visit a month ago. "How are you, Dad?" Tyler asked, leaning forward. "We haven't seen each other in a long time, and Chloe suggested we stop by. She said she missed our conversations." I glanced at my daughter-in-law, who nodded with a smile, but that smile didn't reach her eyes. In my younger days, I worked in sales, and my experience taught me to read people, to notice insincerity in their behavior. Now all my internal alarm bells were going off. "Things are going as usual," I replied, folding the newspaper and placing it on the table next to the armchair. "My health is fine, the house is in order, I read books, and sometimes I meet with friends. How about you? Work? Plans for the future?" Chloe and Tyler exchanged glances, and in that glance I caught something elusively disturbing. It was not just an exchange of glances between spouses, but some kind of secret signal, as if they had agreed on something in advance and were now coordinating their actions. Chloe was the first to break the short pause, which seemed too long to me. "Everything's great with us," she said too quickly, as if it were a rehearsed phrase. Tyler got a promotion at work, and I'm not complaining either. Clients are happy with our projects, and we're getting bonuses. Actually, we're thinking of taking a little break, a change of scenery. You know, we haven't had a vacation in over a year. I knew that wasn't true. Last fall, they had gone to New York for the weekend, and in the winter, they had spent a week at a ski resort in Colorado. Tyler himself told me about these trips and showed me photos. Why was Chloe now claiming the opposite? Taking a break is good, I agreed, studying my sister-in-law's face. Where are you going? Do you have any favorite vacation spots? Well, we haven't decided yet, Tyler replied, scratching the back of his head, a habit he'd had since childhood that betrayed his nervousness. Maybe somewhere south, to the sea. Chloe has long dreamed of warm sunshine and sandy beaches. Florida, maybe, or South Carolina. I nodded, but deep down, something about this conversation alarmed me. My son and daughter-in-law weren't acting quite naturally, as if they were rehearsing a prepared script. Their smiles seemed too forced, and their eyes restless. Tyler tapped his fingers on the armrest of the sofa, and Chloe kept fixing her hair, gestures that spoke of nervousness. How's your health? Chloe asked, leaning toward me with exaggerated concern. Are you taking your medication regularly? Maybe you need help with shopping or cleaning? We could hire someone to help you around the house. The question sounded caring, but something in her tone made me even more wary. Chloe had never shown such interest in my health or daily life before. She usually limited herself to polite questions and quickly moved the conversation onto other topics. Thanks, dear, but I'm managing on my own for now, I replied. My health is fine, and I keep the house tidy. The cleaning lady comes once a week, which is enough. Tyler got up from the sofa and walked around the living room, stopping near the bookshelves and looking at the spines of the volumes. I noticed how my son was carefully examining the room, as if looking for something specific or simply memorizing the layout of the room. His gaze lingered on the old safe in the corner behind the wardrobe, then moved to the dresser where I kept my documents, then to the painting behind which there was a small hiding place. Dad, have you thought about moving to a smaller place? Tyler asked unexpectedly, without turning away from the bookshelf. This house is quite big for one person, and it must be expensive to maintain. Heating, electricity, taxes. The question hit me like a punch in the gut. I felt something tighten inside me with surprise and hurt. The question sounded too insistent, too interested, as if there was some hidden motive behind it. I looked at Chloe and saw that she was watching my reaction closely, studying my face. I'm comfortable here, I replied calmly, trying not to show how the question had affected me. This house is full of memories of your mother, of our family, and I'm not going to leave it. I feel at home here. Of course, Tyler hastily agreed, apparently sensing that he had touched a sensitive nerve. I just thought you might be lonely in such a big house, or that it might be hard to keep up with all the housework. Chloe got up from the sofa and walked over to an antique chest of drawers standing against the wall. Her fingers slid over the polished surface, her gaze studying every detail of the furniture. She opened one of the drawers, looked inside, then closed it carefully. What beautiful things you have here, she said, turning to me. This dresser must be very expensive, right? And these paintings look like works of art, too. You have excellent taste. I inherited the dresser from my parents, I replied, keeping my eyes on my sister-in-law. It's an antique, of course, but its value to me is more sentimental. Elizabeth and I bought the paintings during our travels. Tyler returned to the sofa and sat down next to his wife. They exchanged another glance, and I could clearly sense that some kind of silent dialogue was taking place between them. The atmosphere in the room became more tense. Although on the surface everything looked like a normal family visit, there was something unspoken hanging in the air, some secret they were hiding from me. Dad, could you help us out a little? Tyler finally said, looking me straight in the eye. The thing is, we have the opportunity to go on vacation at a very attractive price, but finances aren't great right now. You know how it is. There it was. The real purpose of their visit was finally revealed. I felt a slight disappointment, although somewhere deep down I already guessed where the conversation was going. Over the years, I had grown accustomed to Tyler only turning to me for help when he needed something. How much do you need? I asked directly, deciding not to delay in finding out the true extent of their request. Well, not very much, Tyler hesitated, clearly embarrassed by my directness. Maybe around $5,000. We'd definitely pay you back as soon as we get our bonus. It's just a temporary difficulty. $5,000. That's a lot of money, especially for a vacation. You could spend a month in Europe or buy a ticket to the most expensive resort for that kind of money. Something didn't add up. Chloe nodded, supporting her husband with her most charming expression. We will definitely pay it back, she added, leaning forward and touching my hand. It's just that this is such a wonderful opportunity, and we don't want to miss it. You know, sometimes in life, opportunities come along that you can't pass up. I looked at them silently, considering their request and analyzing their behavior. $5,000 was a significant amount, but not critical to my budget. The problem was not the money, but how they presented it. Their nervousness, unnatural behavior, and overly detailed explanations did not fit with a normal request for help. They were hiding something, and I could feel it with every fiber of my being. I'll think about it, I finally said. Give me some time to consider your request. It's a serious amount of money, and I have to weigh all the circumstances. Of course, Dad, Tyler replied, apparently relieved that he hadn't received a categorical refusal. We understand that this is a serious decision. We don't need an answer right now. After that, the conversation gradually shifted to more neutral topics. We talked about the weather, how this winter had been particularly cold, the news, the recent city council elections, and plans for the weekend. But I continued to observe my guests closely and noticed many small details that didn't fit into the picture of a normal family visit. Chloe got up several times and walked around the room, looking at objects and furniture as if she were assessing their value. Tyler glanced at his watch periodically, as if he were in a hurry to get somewhere or waiting for a specific time. They stayed with me for about an hour and a half, but time dragged on slowly because of the tension I felt in the air. The conversation was awkward, the pauses grew longer, and I could see that my guests were also feeling uncomfortable. Finally, Chloe glanced at her watch and announced that it was time for them to leave. When they were finally ready to leave, I walked them to the door. Tyler gave me a big hug and asked me once again to consider their request, promising that they would definitely pay back the debt. Chloe also said a very warm goodbye, kissed me on both cheeks, and said they would be back soon. But in her eyes, I saw something insincere, some kind of falsehood that made me doubt their true intentions once again. Closing the door behind my guests, I returned to the living room and sat down in my armchair again. The evening left a strange, uneasy feeling in my soul that would not go away. Something about my son and daughter-in-law's behavior was definitely wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was yet. Their request for money seemed suspicious, and their behavior seemed unnatural. I decided that I needed to be more attentive and cautious. The next morning, I woke up with the same uneasy feeling that had tormented me all night. My sleep had been restless, filled with fragmented dreams about yesterday's visit. Something about Tyler and Chloe's behavior bothered me, and I decided it was time to check something important. After breakfast and my morning cup of coffee, I went up to my bedroom on the second floor. My footsteps on the wooden staircase sounded hollow in the morning silence of the house. The winter sun shone through the bedroom window, casting long shadows on the parquet floor. I walked over to the old wardrobe that stood against the far wall. This massive oak wardrobe was another inheritance from my parents, and over the years it had become not only a place to store clothes, but also a reliable hiding place for my most important belongings. Pushing a few suits aside, I felt with my hand for a small wooden panel in the back wall of the wardrobe. The panel was cleverly disguised and practically invisible to the untrained eye. My father had shown me this secret when I was a teenager, and since then I had used this hiding place to store cash and particularly important documents. Pressing a hidden spring, I opened the secret compartment. Inside should have been several wads of cash, my rainy day fund, savings that I preferred to keep outside the banking system. There was about $8,000 in total, money that I had saved over the years, little by little, from my pension and investment income. These funds were intended for emergencies, medical expenses, or other unforeseen circumstances. My heart skipped a beat when I discovered that the hiding place was empty, completely empty. Where neatly stacked bills should have been, there was only emptiness. I checked the compartment several times, feeling around in every corner, thinking that maybe I was mistaken or the money had somehow shifted. But no, the stash was completely empty. Someone had taken every last dollar. My first impulse was to assume that I had moved the money to another location and forgotten about it. At my age, my memory sometimes fails me, and I might simply not remember where I hid the money. I began to methodically search the bedroom, checking all the possible places where I could have kept the cash. I looked under the mattress, checked the drawers of the dresser, examined the books on the shelves. Sometimes I hid money between the pages of thick volumes. I looked in my late wife's jewelry box, in old shoe boxes, and even checked the freezer in the kitchen, a place many consider a reliable hiding place. But the search was fruitless. The money was gone, and I was absolutely sure that I hadn't moved it anywhere. The last time I had checked the hiding place was 3 weeks ago, when I had added another $300 to it, the remainder of my car insurance payout. At that time, all the money had been there. I had even counted it and made sure the amount was correct. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I began to analyze the situation. Who could have known about the hiding place? Who had access to my home and the opportunity to search my bedroom undisturbed? The list of suspects was very short. Mrs. Rodriguez, the cleaning lady, had been coming once a week for 5 years, and I trusted her completely. She never went upstairs unless she had to, and she certainly didn't rummage through my personal belongings. Besides, she cleaned in my presence, and she simply had no opportunity to search my bedroom unnoticed. My neighbor, Mr. Thompson, had a spare key to my house in case of an emergency, but he was a decent man with whom I had been friends for many years. It was absurd to suggest that he could have stolen my money. Besides, he had never been interested in my financial affairs and did not know about the hiding place. That left only my close relatives, Tyler and Chloe. My son had known the layout of the house since childhood, knew all its nooks and crannies and secrets. I had never specifically shown him the hiding place in the closet, but I could have mentioned it in conversation, or he could have discovered it by accident in his youth, when he often visited my bedroom. Children are curious, and Tyler could well have explored the house and found the secret compartment. The more I thought about it, the clearer the picture became. Yesterday's visit from my son and daughter-in-law now looked completely different. Their strange behavior, nervousness, and careful inspection of the house could all have been preparation for the theft or a cover-up. Chloe got up from the sofa several times and walked around the living room, ostensibly examining the interior. It is quite possible that at some point she went upstairs under some pretext. I tried to reconstruct the chronology of yesterday evening. They arrived around 7 in the evening and stayed with me until 8:30. During their visit, I left the living room several times. I went to the kitchen for tea, to the bathroom, and once I went down to the basement for a bottle of wine. At any of these moments, Chloe or Tyler could have gone upstairs and searched the bedroom. The house is large, and sounds from the upper floor are not always audible in the living room, especially if you move carefully. But gradually I realized that the theft most likely did not happen yesterday. The hiding place was empty, which meant that the money had disappeared earlier. I began to recall other visits from my son and daughter-in-law over the past few weeks. 3 weeks ago, when I last checked the money, Tyler came to see me alone. He said that Chloe had come down with the flu and stayed home. At the time, his behavior also seemed a little strange to me, but I chalked it up to fatigue or problems at work. Tyler spent about 2 hours at my place that day. We sat in the living room, discussed his career plans, and he complained about financial difficulties. He said that he and Chloe had to save money, that prices were rising for everything, and salaries remained the same. At one point, he asked permission to use the bathroom on the second floor, saying that the one downstairs was occupied, even though there was no one else in the house but us. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now I realized it was an excuse to explore the upper floor. My memories began to clear up. After that visit, I noticed that some things in the bedroom were not quite as I had left them. The book on the bedside table was turned differently, and the closet door was slightly ajar, even though I always closed it tightly. At the time, I thought it was the cleaning lady's doing, or that I had forgotten how I had arranged things. Now everything fell into place. Tyler had searched my bedroom, found the hiding place, and taken all the money. And yesterday's visit was a kind of check. He wanted to make sure I hadn't discovered the theft yet, and at the same time asked me for more money under a plausible pretext. $5,000 for a vacation? How brazen. He had already stolen $8,000 from me, and still had the audacity to ask for more. I felt a wave of anger and disappointment rising inside me. My own son, whom I had raised, educated, and always supported, had stolen money from me. He didn't ask to borrow it. He didn't explain the situation. He just took it secretly, like a common thief. And yet he continued to play the role of the caring son, pretending to be concerned about my health and loneliness. But what angered me most was not that he took the money, but how he did it. The deception, the betrayal of trust, the audacity, it was all unbearable. If Tyler had come to me and honestly explained that he was in serious financial trouble, I might have helped him. But he chose the path of a thief and a liar. Chloe was apparently aware of the plan, or even the author of it. Her behavior yesterday, carefully inspecting the house, asking about my health and the possibility of hiring a helper, could all have been reconnaissance for future thefts. Perhaps they planned to go beyond cash and claim more serious valuables. I got out of bed and walked to the window. Beyond the glass was my backyard with its large oak trees and neatly trimmed bushes. This view always calmed me, reminding me of stability and order. But now even the familiar landscape could not quell the emotions raging inside me. I had to decide what to do next. I could call the police and file a report about the theft. I had every reason to suspect Tyler, and the investigation might have proven his guilt. But that would mean a public scandal, the destruction of family ties, and possible criminal prosecution of my son. Despite all the pain and disappointment, I was not ready for such radical measures. The second option was to openly accuse Tyler and demand the return of the money. But I had no direct evidence of his guilt, only circumstantial evidence and suspicions. He could deny everything, accuse me of senile paranoia, or suggest that someone else had stolen the money. Such a confrontation could lead to serious conflict, but it did not guarantee the return of the stolen money. The third option was more complicated, but also more interesting. I could play their game, pretend that I suspected nothing, and try to expose them using their own methods. After all, I had lived 72 years and knew a thing or two about human nature. If they thought I was an easy target, they were sorely mistaken. As I was pondering my options, the phone rang. I went downstairs and picked up the receiver. It was Tyler. "Hi, Dad," he said in his usual cheerful tone. "How are you? Did you sleep well?" "Thanks, I'm fine," I replied, trying to make my voice sound normal. "How are you?" "Everything's fine. Listen, I wanted to talk to you again about our request. Have you thought about helping us? You see, we have the opportunity to buy discounted tickets, but only until tomorrow. If we don't act fast, we'll miss our chance." What an amazing coincidence. They asked for $5,000, having already stolen $8,000 from me, and they were rushing me for an answer. Apparently, the stolen money wasn't enough for them, and they wanted even more. "I'm still thinking about it," I said. "Decisions like this can't be made hastily. Give me another day or two." "Of course, Dad, I understand. I just wanted to clarify the timing. We really appreciate your support." After the conversation ended, I felt that I had made my decision. They wanted to play games? Fine. I would show them that 72 years old was not a death sentence, and that experience and wisdom could be a formidable weapon against arrogance and greed. A plan for revenge began to form in my head, and I realized that this story was just beginning. After talking to Tyler, I felt that I needed more compelling evidence of his guilt than just suspicions and logical constructions. My intuition told me that my son was indeed guilty of theft, but I needed concrete facts in order to plan my next steps. I decided to conduct a thorough search of the house to find any traces of their presence or clues that might have been left behind after yesterday's visit. I started with the living room, where we had spent most of the evening. I carefully examined the sofa where Tyler and Chloe had been sitting, checked the space between the cushions, and looked under the furniture. Sometimes people drop small items without noticing, and these finds can reveal a lot about their intentions and plans. But the initial search yielded nothing, just a few coins and an old pen that had obviously been lying there for a long time. Then I moved on to the hallway, where their coats had been hanging during their visit. Tyler had hung his dark blue jacket on a hook by the front door, and Chloe had neatly placed her expensive coat next to it. I remembered that they hadn't undressed right away, standing in the hallway for a few minutes and talking to each other in hushed voices. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now I realize that they were probably coordinating their actions or discussing their plans for the evening. As I looked around the space near the front door, I noticed a small puddle of water on the floor, traces of melted snow from their shoes. The puddle was an unusual shape, as if someone had been standing in one place for a long time, shifting from foot to foot. This could mean that one of them had lingered in the hallway longer than necessary, perhaps waiting for the right moment to act. Going up to the second floor, I examined my bedroom more carefully. This time I was looking not only for signs of a search of the hiding place, but also for any traces of an intruder. I checked the dust on surfaces, the location of small objects, even the smells in the air. In the corner of the room, near the window, I noticed the faint but distinct scent of Chloe's perfume, the same expensive French perfume I had recognized yesterday. The scent was fresh, clearly no more than a day old, which meant that Chloe had indeed been in my bedroom. This discovery made my heart beat faster, so my suspicions were well-founded. Chloe had been up to my bedroom, and now the question was why she had done so and what exactly had happened there. Perhaps she had been acting as a scout, surveying the territory for future plans, or perhaps she was the one who had discovered and robbed the hiding place. Continuing my search, I decided to check the guest bathroom on the second floor, the one Tyler had supposedly used during his previous visit. The door to the medicine cabinet was slightly ajar, even though I always kept it tightly closed. Inside the cabinet, everything looked neat, but some of the bottles were not in their usual places. Someone had definitely been rummaging through my medicines, perhaps studying what I was taking or looking for something valuable. Going back down to the living room, I noticed something that had escaped my attention earlier. Near the coat rack in the hallway, there was a small piece of paper on the floor, apparently fallen out of someone's pocket. I picked it up and saw that it was part of a receipt from an electronics store. Only numbers and part of the product name were visible on the scrap, but that was enough to tell that the purchase had been made recently and was quite expensive. After carefully examining the piece of paper, I decided to check the pockets of Tyler's jacket, which he had hung in the hallway yesterday. Of course, the jacket was no longer there, but I remembered exactly where it had been hanging. Perhaps something else had fallen out of the pockets that could shed light on their true intentions and plans. A thorough inspection of the area around the coat rack yielded an unexpected result. Under a small rug that lay by the front door, I found two folded pieces of paper. My heart beat faster when I unfolded my find and saw that they were airline tickets. Tickets to Miami in the names of Tyler and Chloe Connor, departing in a week, on December 23rd to be exact. I studied the tickets carefully, checking every detail. A morning flight, direct to Miami, returning only 2 weeks later. Expensive business class tickets that cost at least $3,000 for two people. But the most important thing was the date of purchase. The tickets were bought on December 18th, just 5 days ago. This date coincided exactly with my suspicions about when the money was stolen from the hiding place. The picture became absolutely clear. Tyler stole my money specifically to pay for this luxurious vacation in Miami. $8,000 from my stash went to tickets, hotels, entertainment, to their carefree vacation at my expense. And now they were asking me for an additional $5,000, probably for pocket money and shopping. I sat down in my chair, holding the tickets in my hands, and felt a cold rage rising inside me. This wasn't just theft. It was betrayal of the lowest order. My son had stolen money I had set aside for emergencies to pay for a luxurious vacation for himself and his wife. At the same time, he continued to play the role of the caring son, asking about my health and even having the audacity to ask for more money. What struck me most was their self-confidence. They didn't even bother to hide the evidence properly. The tickets were lying around in my hallway, as if they were absolutely sure that I would never notice anything. Perhaps they thought I was a decrepit old man who couldn't put two and two together. Or maybe they thought I trusted them so much that I would never suspect anything bad. This thought hurt my pride particularly deeply. All my life I had been an attentive and perceptive person, skilled at understanding people and situations. And suddenly my own son decided that he could steal from me with impunity, counting on my blind parental love and age-related carelessness. I got up and paced around the living room, thinking about the circumstances that had come to light. Now I had not just suspicions, but concrete evidence. The tickets clearly linked the theft of money to Tyler and Chloe's plans. The date of purchase, the amount, the coincidence with the disappearance of funds from the hiding place, everything added up to an irrefutable picture of their guilt. But what to do with this information? My first impulse was to call Tyler immediately and confront him, presenting the tickets as proof of his betrayal. But I realized that such a direct approach might not produce the desired result. Tyler could try to deny everything, come up with some explanation, or even accuse me of spying on him and rummaging through his personal belongings. Besides, simply settling the score would not return the stolen money to me or punish them for their betrayal. I knew I needed a more sophisticated approach that would not only restore justice, but also teach them a lesson they would remember for the rest of their lives. As I thought about possible courses of action, I remembered my youth, when I worked in sales and often encountered scammers and cheaters. That's when I learned to play by their rules, using their own methods against them. Direct confrontation rarely yielded good results, but cunning and strategic thinking often proved more effective. An idea began to form in my head. If Tyler and Chloe thought they were so smart and could get away with deceiving me, then they would find out what their supposed victim was capable of. I wasn't going to just forget about what had happened or limit myself to a family conversation. They deserved a real lesson. I carefully folded the tickets and hid them in a safe place. These documents were my trump card in the game to come, and I didn't want Tyler and Chloe to find out about their loss ahead of time. Let them think their plan remains a secret. Let them continue to feel safe. That would give me time to prepare a fitting response to their betrayal. I spent the rest of the day thinking, considering various scenarios for possible revenge. It was important to act smartly and prudently, not letting emotions get the better of reason. Tyler and Chloe had shown their true colors, and now it was my turn to show them what Arthur Connor was like when he was betrayed and robbed. That evening, I sat in the same chair where I had received my deceitful guest the day before, and felt a firm resolve growing inside me. The game had begun, and I was determined to win. My age and experience would be my main advantages in this confrontation with arrogance and greed. The next morning, I woke up with a clear head and a clear understanding of what needed to be done. A night of reflection had borne fruit. The plan was beginning to take shape. Over the long years of my life, I had accumulated not only experience, but also connections that could now be useful in restoring justice. Tyler and Chloe thought I was a helpless old man, but they were deeply mistaken. At 72, I had retained not only my mental clarity, but also my connections with people who could help me in this delicate situation. After breakfast, I took out my old address book, a thick leather volume in which I had collected the contact details of business partners, friends, and acquaintances over the years. This book was a veritable treasure trove of useful connections accumulated over decades of work in various fields of business. Many of these people had already retired like me, but some were still active and influential. The first person I decided to call was Gerald Fisher, an old friend of mine who had worked in the travel business for a long time. Jerry owned several travel agencies in Kentucky and neighboring states and had extensive connections in the travel industry. If anyone could help me figure out the situation surrounding Tyler and Chloe's trip to Miami, it was him. "Arthur!" Jerry exclaimed when he heard my voice. "What a pleasant surprise! How are you, old friend? Haven't heard from you in 100 years." "Hi, Jerry. Things are going well, thank you. Listen, I need some advice on travel matters. Do you have a few minutes?" Of course, of course. Always happy to help an old friend. What's this about?" I told him that my son was planning a trip to Miami, and I want to learn more about prices, hotels, and possible pitfalls of such a trip. Naturally, I didn't mention the real reasons for my interest, presenting it as if I wanted to surprise my son or give him some useful advice. "Miami in December is a great choice," Jerry said. "The weather is beautiful, there aren't as many tourists as in the summer, and the prices are more reasonable." "When is he planning to go?" "From December 23rd for 2 weeks," I replied, reading the information from the tickets I had found. "I see, for the New Year holidays. Then prices will be high, on the contrary. It's peak season. Good hotels cost from $200 to $500 a night, plus food, entertainment, and excursions. For 2 people for 2 weeks, you'll need at least $5,000 to $7,000, or even more if you don't economize." This information confirmed my calculations. Tyler and Chloe plan to spend all the money they stole from me on their vacation, and possibly even more. Jerry continued to share details about Miami, talking about popular areas, restaurants, and attractions. But I was more interested in another aspect of the conversation. Jerry, tell me, if someone has problems with tickets or hotel reservations, is there any way to fix it? For example, if documents are lost or there is a misunderstanding with payment. It depends on the situation, he replied thoughtfully. Tickets are more complicated. Airlines usually follow the rules strictly, but with hotels, you can usually work something out, especially if there's a reason to cancel the reservation. But why do you need this information? Just curious, just in case. You know, at our age, it's better to be prepared for any surprises. After talking to Jerry, I called another old acquaintance, Richard Black, who worked in banking. Richard was an expert in financial transactions and could advise on issues related to money transfers, card blocking, and other banking procedures. I wasn't going to use this knowledge for anything illegal, but I wanted to understand all the possible levers of influence. Arthur, my friend. Richard was clearly happy to hear from me. How's life? I hope you're not thinking of taking out a loan at your age? No, Rich, I don't need a loan. But I have a question about banking operations. Imagine a situation. A person is planning a large purchase or trip, but at the last moment, there are problems with payment. What can be done? Well, it depends on the specific situation. When it comes to credit cards, you can temporarily block the account for security reasons. If it's about transfers, they can be canceled or delayed. And if it's about cash, it's more complicated, but there are options too. Arthur, are you okay? Have you had any problems with fraudsters? No, everything's fine. Just thinking about financial security. There's so much fraud around these days. My conversation with Richard gave me valuable information on how to influence Tyler and Chloe's financial plans without resorting to direct confrontation. If I can create problems for them with hotel payments or additional expenses in Miami, it will significantly spoil their vacation. Next on my list was Marcus Green, a lawyer I met many years ago when I bought my house. Marcus specialized in family law and inheritance issues, and his advice could be useful in understanding the legal aspects of the situation. Mr. Connor, Marcus recognized my voice immediately. It's an honor to hear from you. I hope everything is okay with the house documents. Thank you, Marcus. The documents are fine. But I have a theoretical question. Let's imagine a situation. An elderly person discovers that one of their close relatives has taken money from them without permission. What options are there besides going to the police? Marcus paused for a few seconds, thinking about the question. That's an interesting situation. Legally, it could qualify as theft, but family matters are often resolved without involving law enforcement. For example, you could document the fact, draw up a written demand for the return of the funds, and call on witnesses. You could also review your will or other documents relating to inheritance. Mr. Connor, if this isn't a theoretical question, it's theoretical for now, I interrupted him. I'm just thinking about different situations in life. Thank you for your advice. The information I received from Marcus made me think about the long-term consequences of Tyler's actions. Perhaps it was worth revising my will to ensure that he did not receive undeserved benefits from his theft and deception. It was not part of immediate revenge, but it could be an important element of long-term justice. After a series of phone calls, I began to develop a concrete plan of action. Direct confrontation was not my goal. I wanted Tyler and Chloe to feel the consequences of their actions, but without immediately realizing that they had been exposed. The best punishment for them would be the complete collapse of their plans for a luxurious vacation in such a way that they could blame no one but their own bad luck. The first step in my plan was to study the details of their reservation. I already had the tickets, but I needed to find out where exactly they planned to stay in Miami, what excursions they had booked, and what restaurants they planned to visit. This information would allow me to understand the weak points in their plans and find ways to disrupt them. I turned on my computer. A few years ago, my grandson taught me how to use the internet, and now those skills came in handy. Searching by ticket numbers and passenger names yielded some results. Tyler wasn't very careful about privacy. I found plenty of clues about their plans on social media. Chloe posted photos of hotel brochures, shared links to tours, and even bragged about booking dinner at an expensive restaurant in Miami Beach. By studying their digital footprints, I pieced together a detailed picture of their upcoming trip. They planned to stay at the five-star Fontainebleau Hotel, book several boat tours, a table at José Andrés restaurant, and tickets to a concert at the American Airlines Arena. The total cost of all the entertainment and pleasures clearly exceeded the $8,000 they stole from me. Apparently, they were counting on getting an additional $5,000 from me to complete the financing of their luxurious vacation. Now I had a complete picture of their plans, and I could begin to methodically destroy them. It was important to act cautiously and gradually, creating the appearance of random misfortunes rather than deliberate interference. Tyler and Chloe had to feel that they were being pursued by misfortune, but not guess the real reason for what was happening. I started with the simplest thing. I called the Fontainebleau Hotel and introduced myself as an insurance company employee checking the authenticity of a client's documents. Citing suspicious activity on Tyler's credit card, I asked the hotel to temporarily freeze their reservation until the circumstances could be clarified. The hotel administrator took my call seriously. These days, problems with fraud and card theft are very real. The next step was to cancel their tour reservations. The information I received from Jerry helped here. He gave me the contact details of several tour companies in Miami. Introducing myself as Tyler and citing changes in plans, I canceled 2 of the 3 tours they had booked. The companies were understanding. Tourists often change their plans at the last minute. The table at José Andrés restaurant turned out to be a more difficult task. This restaurant was very popular, and canceling the reservation could arouse suspicion. Instead of canceling, I decided to make changes to the request. I moved the date up a day and changed the time from evening to daytime. When Tyler and Chloe arrive at the appointed time, they will find that their table was yesterday at lunchtime, and it will be virtually impossible to get a new reservation for the evening. Working on my revenge plan, I felt a surge of energy and excitement that I hadn't felt in years. It reminded me of my younger years, when I was involved in complex business negotiations and had to calculate every move several steps ahead. At that time, I was known for my ability to find unconventional solutions and outmaneuver my opponents using their own methods. After lunch, I decided to tackle the more delicate part of the plan, impacting their financial capabilities. Richard Black's advice came in handy here. I knew Tyler's credit card number. He had used it to buy tickets, and this information was available in the documents they had lost at my house. Calling the bank and introducing myself as Tyler, I reported suspicious activity on the card during a recent trip and asked them to temporarily limit the transaction limit for security reasons. The bank responded professionally, blocking large transactions on the card until the owner visited the branch in person with documents. This meant that Tyler and Chloe would not be able to spend large amounts of money on entertainment and shopping in Miami, which would significantly spoil their vacation. The final touch was working with the airline. Here I acted most cautiously, realizing that I had to be as delicate as possible with the tickets. Introducing myself as Tyler, I called the airline's customer service and informed them of my desire to change seats on the plane, to move from business class to economy class with an additional cash payment at check-in. The operator recorded my request, promising that Tyler would be offered this option when checking in for the flight. Of course, Tyler would refuse to switch to economy class, but this procedure would create additional confusion and delay during check-in, which would also ruin the start of their vacation. By evening, the main part of my plan had been implemented. I had created a whole series of problems for Tyler and Chloe that were supposed to significantly spoil their stolen vacation. A blocked hotel reservation, canceled tours, restaurant problems, credit card restrictions, and ticket confusion would all combine to turn their dream of a luxurious vacation into a complete nightmare. Most importantly, all these problems look like ordinary misunderstandings, technical glitches, or minor mistakes that happen in the travel business. No one could have suspected that behind all these misfortunes was the systematic interference of their thieving father. Sitting in my armchair with a cup of tea in the evening, I felt satisfied with the work I had done. The first stage of revenge was complete, but it was only the beginning. Tyler and Chloe didn't know what was in store for them yet, but soon they would begin to understand that theft has consequences, and that 72 years is not a sentence for a person who knows how to think and act strategically. The next morning, I woke up with a feeling of anticipation. The plan was in motion, And now it was time to watch it come to life. The first calls to the hotel and travel agencies had been made the day before, and today the first troubles for Tyler and Chloe were supposed to begin. I knew I had to keep a close eye on how things were going, so that I could adjust my actions or add new elements to my revenge plan if necessary. After breakfast, I decided to call Tyler under a harmless pretext. It was important to maintain the appearance of a normal relationship and at the same time find out if they had already started having problems with their reservations. Besides, I was curious to see how they would behave, knowing that in a few days they would be flying off on vacation with my stolen money. "Hi, Dad," Tyler answered, his voice sounding cheerful as usual. "How are you? Did you sleep well?" "Thanks, son. Everything's fine. How are you? How's work? Any plans for the weekend?" "Everything's great. We're working slowly, getting ready for the holidays. Chloe's going shopping today. She wants to buy something for the vacation. Have you thought about our request? Time is running out, you know." There it was. They were still counting on getting an extra $5,000 from me. These people's audacity knew no bounds. First they stole $8,000, then they asked for another $5, and they were rushing me for an answer, creating a sense of urgency. "I'm still thinking about it," I replied calmly. "You see, at my age, you can't make financial decisions hastily. Give me another day or two." "Of course, Dad, I understand. We just really hope for your support. This vacation means so much to us." I could almost physically feel myself nauseated by his hypocrisy. A vacation with stolen money means a lot to them. What a touching story. But I held back and continued the conversation in the same friendly tone. "So where did you decide to go? Last time you mentioned the South, but you didn't give any specifics." "Well, we're thinking about Florida. Miami, maybe. The weather is beautiful there right now, and Chloe has been dreaming of a beach vacation for a long time." It's interesting that he still pretends that the final decision hasn't been made, even though the tickets have already been bought and must be in his pocket. Or do they think the tickets are still at my house, where they lost them? Perhaps they haven't noticed the loss yet and think their plans are still a secret. "Miami is a good choice," I agreed. "Expensive, of course, but a beautiful city. I hope you have a good time." "Thanks, Dad. We are really looking forward to a great vacation." After the conversation ended, I realized that they still didn't suspect anything. Tyler sounded confident and carefree, clearly believing that all their plans were going according to schedule. This meant that my actions yesterday had not yet yielded any visible results. But that was okay. In the travel business, problems often don't show up right away. Around noon, the phone rang. It was Chloe, which was quite unusual. She usually only contacted me through Tyler or in his presence. "Hi, Arthur," she said, a slight tension in her voice. "I hope I'm not disturbing you?" "Of course not, dear. What's the matter?" "Nothing in particular. I just wanted to talk to you about a Christmas present for Tyler. I have a few ideas and would like to know your opinion." It was strange. Chloe had never consulted me about gifts for Tyler before. What's more, Christmas was a week away, and she sounded as if she hadn't bought anything yet. Perhaps it was an attempt to gauge my mood before asking me for money, or to see if I suspected anything. "I'd be happy to help with advice," I replied. "What are your ideas?" "Well, I was thinking about a nice watch, or maybe some kind of travel gadget. Tyler loves to travel, and I want the gift to be related to that hobby. A travel-related gift on the eve of their trip to Miami with my money." How ironic. I decided to play along with her a little. "Travel gadgets are a great idea," I said. "Do you travel often yourself? I remember you mentioning that you wanted to go somewhere on vacation." "Yes, we love to travel, but we don't always have the opportunity. Work, finances, same as everyone else. But we hope to fulfill one of our dreams soon." There it was, a veiled request for help. Chloe was trying to gently steer the conversation toward money without mentioning it directly. Perhaps Tyler had asked her to gauge my reaction to their request, or maybe she had decided to act on her own. "Dreams should come true," I remarked philosophically, "especially at your age. Youth passes quickly, and it's important not to miss opportunities." "Exactly," Chloe agreed enthusiastically. "That's exactly what Tyler and I think. You have to seize opportunities while they're there. Opportunities to steal from an elderly father, for example. What an inspiring philosophy of life." But I continued to play the role of the understanding relative. "Well, I'm sure you'll succeed. As for a gift for Tyler, how about a nice suitcase? or a high-quality travel bag. Practical and symbolic. Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you, Arthur. You always give such wise advice. After talking to Chloe, I realized that they really expected to get money from me, and perhaps even took it for granted. Their confidence in their plans was striking, considering that they had already stolen $8,000 from me. In the afternoon, I decided to check on the progress of my plan. First, I called the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami, introducing myself as an insurance company employee who had initiated a reservation check yesterday. Good afternoon, I said to the administrator. Yesterday, I contacted you about a reservation in the name of Tyler Connor. I wanted to check the status of the verification. Yes, I remember that case, replied the woman. We have frozen the reservation until we receive additional documents from the customer. So far, no one has contacted us to resolve the situation. I see. What happens if the client arrives without resolving this issue beforehand? In that case, we will not be able to provide a room until the circumstances are fully clarified. The client will have to find alternative accommodation or resolve the issue with the documents on site, which may take some time. Excellent. The first trap was set and waiting for its victims. When Tyler and Chloe arrive at the hotel, they will be greeted with an unpleasant surprise in the form of a blocked reservation. In the middle of the tourist season, finding alternative accommodation in Miami will be extremely difficult, especially in hotels of the standard they are accustomed to. The next step was to check the situation with the tours. I called one of the companies where I had canceled their reservation yesterday. Hello, yesterday I canceled a tour in Connor's name. I wanted to make sure everything was done correctly. Yes, sir, the cancellation has been recorded. The funds will be refunded to your card within 3 to 5 business days. What if the customer changes his mind and wants to reinstate the booking? Unfortunately, this tour is fully booked for the next 2 weeks. There may be cancellations, but there are no guarantees. Another trap worked as intended. Their tour plans were beginning to fall apart, and it would be nearly impossible to restore them. Checking on the Jose Andres restaurant was particularly satisfying. When I called, introduced myself as Tyler, and asked about our reservation, the restaurant manager regretfully informed me that we had missed our lunch reservation yesterday. But we had a reservation for dinner on Saturday, I said, feigning confusion. Unfortunately, our system shows a reservation for Friday, lunch, 1:30 p.m. If you didn't show up, the table was given to other guests. We are fully booked for Saturday evening for several weeks in advance. Perfect. When they arrive at the restaurant on Saturday evening, another disappointment awaits them. Their spot at one of Miami's best restaurants is lost forever, and finding a last-minute alternative will be extremely difficult. That evening, Tyler called me. I could tell from his voice that he was upset or worried about something. Hey, Dad, how's it going? He asked, but his usual cheerfulness was missing from his voice. I'm fine, son. How are you? You sound tense. Just some minor problems at work, nothing serious. Listen, I wanted to talk to you again about our request. Have you made a decision yet? I wondered what made him bring up the subject of money again. Perhaps they had already encountered their first problems and realized that they would need more funds to solve the difficulties that had arisen. Or maybe they were just nervous before the trip and wanted to be sure of financial support. I'm leaning toward a positive decision, I said after a pause, but I need some guarantees of repayment. You understand that at my age, every dollar counts. Of course, Dad. We'll definitely pay you back. As soon as we get our bonus in January, we'll pay off the debt right away. Okay, then let's meet tomorrow evening. We'll discuss the details, and if everything works out, I'll give you the money. Great. Thanks, Dad. You have no idea how important this is to us. Oh yes, I knew exactly how important it was to them. The stolen money wasn't enough for their extravagant plans, and now they were counting on getting even more from their victim. But tomorrow's meeting was supposed to be a turning point in my plan for revenge. After talking to Tyler, I began preparing for the next stage. Tomorrow I had to play the role of a generous father, ready to help his children, but at the same time lay the groundwork for their complete exposure. The plan was becoming more complicated, but it was precisely this complexity that made it more interesting and effective. I took out my notebook and began to write down the details of tomorrow's meeting. It was important to think through every word, every gesture, so that Tyler and Chloe would not suspect anything. They had to leave for Miami fully confident that their plan had succeeded and that all the problems awaiting them were just bad luck or random glitches. I spent the evening thinking about justice and retribution. Many people my age would have preferred to remain silent to avoid family conflict, but I was not prepared to be a victim of arrogance and betrayal, even if the traitor turned out to be my own son. Age gave me not only experience, but also the understanding that justice sometimes requires active action. Sitting in my chair and sipping my evening tea, I felt satisfaction from a well-planned operation. The first part of the plan had been launched, the mechanisms of revenge had begun to work, and tomorrow a decisive meeting was to take place. Tyler and Chloe still had no idea that their plans were already beginning to fall apart, and that their intended victim was a much more dangerous opponent than they could have imagined. The next day began with careful preparation for the evening meeting with Tyler and Chloe. I knew that this would be the key moment in my plan. I had to play the role of the kind father so convincingly that they would not suspect a trick for a second. At the same time, I planned to lay a few extra time bombs that would explode during their stay in Miami. In the morning, I went to the bank and withdrew $5,000 in cash. The money was real. I really was going to give it to them, but on completely different terms than my guests expected. These funds were not meant to be a gift, but a tool for even more sophisticated revenge. When I got home, I called my old friend Jerry Fisher, who worked in the tourism business. This time, I needed more specific help. Jerry, hi. Remember we talked about Miami yesterday? I have a delicate request. I'm listening, Arthur. How can I help? I need to arrange a little check on a couple of tourists. I don't want to go into details, but let's just say I need to make sure they're really spending their money wisely, as they promised. Jerry paused for a few seconds, thinking about my request. Arthur, this sounds like a family problem. You want me to follow one of your relatives? Something like that. You see, it's not about mistrust. It's more for educational purposes. Sometimes people need to learn the value of money the hard way. I see. I have a partner in Miami who provides VIP services for tourists. He can arrange discreet surveillance and create certain educational situations. But it will cost money. Money is not a problem. I want their vacation to be unforgettable, but not in the way they expect. After talking to Jerry, I contacted the bank where Tyler had his credit card. I had already initiated restrictions yesterday, but now I wanted to make sure that the block would work when they tried to pay for large purchases in Miami. Posing as an airport security officer, I reported a suspicious attempt to use the card at a vending machine to the bank. This should reinforce the existing restrictions and make any card transactions extremely difficult. At lunchtime, Chloe called. I could tell from her voice that she was upset but trying to hide it. Hi, Arthur. How are you? Great, dear. How are you? You sound a little tense. No, everything's fine. Just the pre-holiday rush, you know. By the way, Tyler said you're meeting today? Yes, he asked to discuss a financial matter. Come by in the evening, around 7. Okay. Arthur, can I ask you something? Do you remember if we left any documents with you last time? That's it. They finally noticed the tickets were missing. I wonder how long they looked for them and what conclusions they drew about their disappearance. Documents? I don't remember. What exactly were you looking for? Oh, nothing important. Tyler thought he might have left some papers in his jacket pocket, but he probably lost them somewhere else. If I find anything, I'll be sure to return it, although I keep my house pretty tidy. Of course, of course. All right, see you tonight. After that call, I realized they were starting to get nervous. The loss of the tickets had alarmed them, but they probably chalked it up to their own carelessness. The main thing was that they didn't yet connect the missing documents with the possible exposure of their plans. I spent the second half of the day preparing for the meeting. I laid out $5,000 on the living room table, making it look like a generous gesture from a father. I placed a notepad and pen next to it, supposedly to write up a promissory note. In reality, the document I was going to ask them to sign contained several additional clauses that they were unlikely to read carefully. In addition to the standard information about the loan amount and repayment terms, I included a clause stating that the borrower undertakes to provide a report on the intended use of the funds, including all receipts and documents related to expenses. There was also a clause about the possibility of early repayment of the debt in case of misuse of funds. In small print at the end of the document, it said that the borrower agreed to have the intended use of the funds verified by third parties at the lender's discretion. These clauses gave me legal grounds for further action and created additional opportunities to influence their plans. At exactly 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened it and saw Tyler and Chloe with big smiles on their faces. But I noticed a slight anxiety in my son's eyes, and Chloe seemed more tense than usual. "Hi, Dad." Tyler hugged me tightly. "Thank you for agreeing to help us." Come in, come in. I made some tea and cookies." We went into the living room, where the money and documents were waiting for them on the table. Chloe's eyes immediately darted to the bills, and I saw her relax instantly. Tyler also cheered up noticeably at the sight of the money. "Dad, you have no idea how grateful we are to you," Tyler said, sitting down on the sofa. "This vacation is really important to us." "I understand, son. Youth passes quickly, and it's important to live life to the fullest. But I want you to understand that this is a serious amount of money, and I need certain guarantees." I showed them the receipt I had prepared in advance. "This is a standard loan agreement. We need to record the amount, the repayment terms, and other details. It's just a formality, of course, but at our age, it's better to have everything documented." Tyler took the receipt and quickly scanned the text. As I expected, he didn't bother to study the fine print, focusing only on the main points about the amount and repayment terms. "Everything looks reasonable," he said, picking up a pen. "I agree to all the terms." "Chloe also has to sign as a co-borrower," I added. "You're a family, and the responsibility should be shared." Chloe also signed without even looking at the document. Their greed and impatience played into my hands. They were willing to sign anything to get the money. "Excellent," I said, putting away the receipt. "Now the money is yours. I hope you really have a good time." "We will," Chloe exclaimed. "We've been dreaming about this trip for so long." While they counted the money and thanked me, I watched them with a mixture of disgust and satisfaction. They were delighted to have received additional funds to add to what they had already stolen, completely unaware that this money would cause them even more problems. "Dad, when are you leaving?" I asked, feigning keen interest in their plans. "The day after tomorrow in the morning," Tyler replied. "Direct flight to Miami. Chloe has already packed her bags." "Wonderful. Where are you staying? I hear there are a lot of good hotels in Miami." "At the Fontainebleau," Chloe announced proudly. "A 5-star hotel on Miami Beach. It has everything. Beaches, restaurants, a spa." They still didn't know that their reservation had been blocked. Tomorrow or the day after, they would be in for an unpleasant surprise. "Sounds luxurious," I remarked. "I hope you have a plan for entertainment, excursions, restaurants." "Of course," Chloe took out her phone. "We booked a boat trip, dinner at Jose Andres restaurant, several excursions. The program is very busy." The poor girl had no idea that most of their plans had already been ruined. But the most interesting part was yet to come. Around 9 in the evening, they got ready to leave. Tyler thanked me again for my help, promising to pay me back in January. Chloe kissed me on the cheek and said they would send postcards from Miami. "Have a good time," I said goodbye. "And remember, spend your money wisely. Sometimes what seems like a good buy can turn into big problems." "Sure, Dad. We'll be very responsible with our spending." After they left, I immediately moved on to the next stage of the plan. I contacted Jerry in Miami and gave him all the information about Tyler and Chloe's plans. His task was to create a series of minor annoyances for them that would add up to turn their vacation into a nightmare. I also called several restaurants in Miami and made reservations in Tyler's name for the days when they would be busy with other things. A few days before their visit, I would cancel these reservations, creating confusion in their dining plans. The most sophisticated element was the organization of accidental problems with their luggage. Through my contact at the airline, I arranged for their suitcases to be sent on the wrong flight and arrive in Miami 2 or 3 days late. This meant that they would spend the first few days of their vacation without their belongings, wearing the same clothes. That evening, Tyler sent me a message. "Dad, thanks again for your help. You're the best dad in the world. We'll be sure to send you photos from our vacation." Reading this message, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and satisfaction. Sadness that my son had turned into a thief and a liar, and satisfaction that justice would prevail after all. The next morning, I got a call from Jerry. "Arthur, my partner in Miami is ready to go. He's already studied your tourist itineraries and prepared a few surprises. But he wants to clarify. How serious should the trouble be?" "Nothing criminal or dangerous," I replied. Just let them understand that theft has consequences. Minor setbacks, disappointments, ruined plans. That's what we need. Understood. Then get ready for them to have a vacation they'll remember for a long time. The day of Tyler and Chloe's departure came faster than I expected. On the morning of December 23rd, my son called me. Dad, we're at the airport. We wanted to say goodbye before we leave. Have a good flight, son. Take care and enjoy your vacation. We will. Thanks again for everything. See you in 2 weeks. After hanging up, I realized that the active phase of my revenge had begun. Right now, Tyler and Chloe are sitting at the airport, full of joyful anticipation, completely unaware of what awaits them. They have my money in their pockets, both stolen and obtained by deception, but these funds will not bring them the happiness they expect. I sat down in my chair with a cup of morning coffee and imagined how, in a few hours, they would encounter their first problems: a blocked hotel reservation, lost luggage, canceled tours, credit card problems. All this awaited them in sunny Miami. Justice had finally begun its work, and I eagerly awaited news of how their perfect vacation with stolen money was going. The first 3 days after Tyler and Chloe's departure were spent in tense anticipation. I knew my plan was working, but I hadn't heard from them yet. Usually on trips like this, they would regularly send photos and share their impressions, but this time there was no contact. The silence could only mean one thing. They were in serious trouble. On the fourth day, December 27th, Tyler finally called me. It was immediately clear from his voice that something was very wrong. He spoke nervously with poorly concealed irritation. Hi, Dad. How are you? I'm fine, son. How's your vacation? Is the weather good in Miami? The weather's fine, but as for the rest... He paused for a few seconds. Dad, we've run into some problems here. Could you help me with something? I could barely contain a smile. Here we go. Of course, son. What happened? The thing is, there's been some confusion at the hotel about our reservation. They claim there are problems with the paperwork or payment. They put us in a completely different hotel, a much worse one, and our luggage still hasn't arrived. They say something happened to the flight. What a nuisance, I said sympathetically. What does the hotel management say? They refer to some kind of security check. Chloe has already spent half the day talking to them, but to no avail. And another oddity, most of our excursions have been canceled. The company claims that we canceled them ourselves in advance. My plan worked like clockwork. Each element worked exactly at the appointed time, creating more and more trouble for them. That's very strange, I said. What about your credit cards? Are at least the financial issues being handled normally? No! Tyler's voice broke with obvious anger. The bank blocked my main card, citing suspicious activity. I've called them 3 times already, but they require a personal visit to the branch to unblock it. Can you imagine? I'm in Miami, and they want me to come to Louisville. That's terrible, I said sympathetically. What are you doing now? For now, we're spending the cash you gave us. It's good that we have those 5,000. Otherwise, we would have been completely out of money. But even that won't last long in these circumstances. That's the irony of the situation. They were spending my money obtained through deception to solve the problems I had created for them, and they were thanking me for my help. Tyler, could these problems have been caused by some mistake on your part? Maybe you lost the documents or made a mistake with the reservations? I don't know, Dad. Chloe says everything was done correctly, but... He fell silent again. Remember when we talked about whether we might have left something at your house? Tickets and other documents? I remember. Did you ever find them? No. And now I'm starting to think that the problems might have started because we lost them. Maybe someone found our documents and used the information for fraud. An interesting theory. They were beginning to suspect that they had fallen victim to some kind of conspiracy, but they still had no idea who was behind it. That sounds serious, I said. Maybe you should go to the police. We thought about it, but we want to try to solve the problems ourselves first. Maybe everything will work out and we can still save our vacation. The next day, December 28th, Chloe sent me a long message on Messenger. In it, she described all their misadventures in detail and asked for advice. From her story, it became clear that the situation was developing even better than I had planned. It turned out that my contact in Miami had worked very professionally. In addition to problems with the hotel and excursions, they had additional troubles. The restaurants they tried to visit suddenly didn't have their reservations. Taxis took them to the wrong place several times or didn't show up at all. Even the weather forecast seemed to be against them. Every day they planned to go to the beach, it started raining. Chloe wrote that they felt cursed, as if the whole world was against their vacation. She suspected that someone was deliberately ruining their vacation, but she couldn't figure out who was doing it or why. At the end of the message, she asked me to lend them more money because all the problems had significantly increased their expenses. They had to overpay for alternative accommodation, food, transportation, and entertainment. I replied with a sympathetic message, expressing regret about their misfortunes, but politely declined to provide additional funding, citing the limitations of a pensioner's budget. On December 29th, the situation reached a critical point. Tyler called me in the evening, and this time he was openly furious. "Dad, we need to have a serious talk. I suspect that our problems are not accidental." "What do you mean?" "I mean that someone is deliberately ruining our vacation. There are too many coincidences, too many strange mishaps. This just doesn't happen." "And who do you think could be doing this?" "I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. And one more thing. Have you found our tickets or other documents by any chance? I think it all started when they disappeared." The moment of truth was approaching. Tyler began to link the disappearance of the documents to his problems. Soon he would come to the logical conclusion about who could have found and used them. "Tyler, tell me honestly, did those documents you lost contain any important information? Maybe something you didn't tell me about?" The long pause on the line indicated that he understood. The conversation was taking a serious turn. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the tickets to Miami that were bought with money stolen from my stash." Another long pause, then a heavy sigh. "How did you find out?" "I found your tickets at my house after your visit. The date of purchase matched exactly when my money went missing. The rest was simple logic." "Dad, I can explain." "Explain the theft? Explain how you searched my bedroom, stole $8,000, and then had the audacity to ask for $5,000 more?" Now Tyler was silent, and I could only hear his heavy breathing. Finally he spoke, and his voice sounded completely different, tired and doomed. "Dad, we had serious financial problems, debts, loans. We didn't know how to get out of it. And you live alone in a big house. You have savings." "I had savings," I corrected coldly. "And now I don't, because my son chose theft over honest conversation. We plan to pay it back. Honestly, we would have paid it all back." "When? When would you have paid it back? After you spent it all on a luxury vacation?" "Dad, please, let's talk calmly. We can fix everything." "Fix it?" I laughed, and the laugh was unpleasant even to me. "Tyler, do you have any idea who organized all your problems in Miami?" Another pause, this time much longer. "You." "Me? The blocked hotel, the canceled tours, the card problems, the lost luggage. It was all my doing. Welcome to the world of consequences." "You're crazy," Tyler exploded. "Do you realize what you're doing? You're ruining our vacation." "I'm ruining your vacation that you planned with my money, without asking my permission and by stealing from me," I replied calmly. "But we're family. Can't you just forgive and forget? Forgive theft? Forgive betrayal of trust? Tyler, you didn't just steal my money. You stole my faith in you." There was a commotion on the line, then Chloe's voice. "Arthur, it's Chloe. Please, let's resolve this conflict like adults. We're willing to return the money and apologize." "Chloe, you've already spent my money on this vacation. What can you return? And apologies after you've been caught red-handed aren't very valuable. We'll find a way to make up for everything. We'll take out a loan, sell something." "And what will you sell? Things bought with my stolen money?" Chloe fell silent. Then Tyler spoke again. "Dad, okay, I admit we did wrong, but why take revenge? Why turn everything into a war? Because otherwise you wouldn't understand anything. You thought I was a helpless old man who could be robbed with impunity. I decided to show you that you were wrong. And now what?" Tyler's voice sounded completely broken. "Are you going to keep pursuing us?" "That depends on you. It depends on how you behave from now on, what you do to rectify the situation. What do you want from us? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. Theft, lies, betrayal, none of these things go unnoticed, even if the victim seems weak and defenseless. The conversation continued for another 15 minutes. Tyler and Chloe tried to find words to justify their actions, begged for mercy, promised to make everything right. But I knew there was no real remorse in their words, only fear of the consequences and a desire to avoid punishment. When the conversation ended, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. On the one hand, justice had prevailed, and they had learned a lesson they would remember for a long time. On the other hand, this conflict had permanently destroyed our family relationships. But I did not regret my choice. A family is built on trust and mutual respect, not on blind forgiveness for any misdeeds. Tyler and Chloe had crossed a line beyond which forgiveness was impossible. In the evening, I sat in my chair and thought about what had happened. My revenge had succeeded. They realized that they had robbed not a helpless old man, but a person capable of standing up for himself. But this victory was bitter because the price was the loss of a son. Tomorrow they would return home from their ruined vacation, and then a new phase in our relationship would begin. But that was another story. The next 3 days before Tyler and Chloe returned from Miami were spent in tense anticipation. I knew that our phone conversation was only the beginning of a serious conflict that would inevitably continue after their arrival. From time to time, I received messages from them. Short, dry, without the former warmth. They reported on their plans to return early, saying that they saw no point in staying in Miami after what had happened. On the morning of January 2nd, Tyler called from Louisville Airport. "We're here," he said without greeting me. "Can we meet and talk seriously?" "Of course. Come to my house." "My house?" There was bitter irony in his voice. "I'm not sure I have a house anymore, in your sense of the word." "Come anyway. We really do have something to talk about." An hour later, they were standing on my doorstep. Their appearance spoke volumes. Tyler looked haggard and aged, while Chloe seemed confused and depressed. Their tans were uneven, their clothes wrinkled. Obviously, the luggage problems had not been completely resolved by the end of the trip. We went into the living room and sat down. They on the sofa, I in my usual armchair. The atmosphere was tense, completely unlike the warm family gatherings of the past. "Well," Tyler began, looking me straight in the eye, "did you get what you wanted? Our vacation turned into a complete nightmare. We spent all our money solving the problems you created for us." "I didn't create them," I replied calmly. "These problems are a natural consequence of your own actions. You stole money, lied to me, and then asked for more. What did you expect?" "We expected understanding from a loved one," Chloe said bitterly. "Yes, we did the wrong thing, but you could have just talked to us instead of plotting this elaborate revenge." "Talked?" I smirked. "Chloe, when you stole money from my stash, did you think about talking? When you asked for an extra 5,000, were you going to confess to the theft?" She was silent, unable to find the words to argue. "Dad," Tyler leaned forward, "I understand that we did a despicable thing, but we're family. Can't we find a way to fix this?" "Fix it? What exactly can be fixed? The trust you destroyed? The respect you lost? The money you spent?" "We'll pay the money back," Tyler said hastily. "We'll take out a loan, find extra jobs." "How?" "You already have debts, which according to you is why you decided to steal. Where will you get the $13,000 to pay back?" The figure hit him like a blow. Tyler turned pale. 13? But we took 8 from the stash and 5 that you gave us. What about the interest? What about the moral damage? What about the cost of organizing your well-deserved punishment? Do you think my calls to Miami and the services of my people were free?" Chloe sobbed. "You really hate us," she whispered. "No," I replied thoughtfully. "Hate requires emotion. I'm just disappointed. Disappointed in who my son and his wife turned out to be." "We can make it right," Tyler insisted. "Give us a chance to prove—" "A chance?" I got up from my chair and walked to the window. "Tyler, you're a grown man of 45. If you don't understand by this age that stealing is unacceptable, when will you?" But we were desperate. Desperation is no excuse for betrayal. If you had problems, you could have come and told me honestly. I could have helped, but you chose to lie and steal. I turned to them. And you know what strikes me the most? It's not that you stole the money, it's how easy it was for you to lie. How naturally you played the role of caring relatives when you came to me for more after you had already stolen. Tyler lowered his head. Dad, I don't know what to say. I'm ashamed. But is there really no way back? There's always a way back, I replied. But it doesn't lead to my house. What do you mean? I took an envelope out of the dresser drawer and handed it to Tyler. These are copies of documents. The $5,000 loan agreement you signed. Photos of your tickets that I found. Recordings of our phone conversations. Everything you need to file a police report. Chloe trembled. Are you going to turn us in? That's up to you, I replied calmly. You have a choice. Either you disappear from my life forever, no calls, no visits, no attempts to contact me, or tomorrow morning I'm going to the police to report the theft. But we're family, Tyler exclaimed. We were family, I corrected him, until you decided that family ties gave you the right to steal. What about the money, Chloe asked. Do you want us to pay it back? The money? I smiled. Chloe, you already spent it all in Miami, solving problems you created for yourselves. What kind of repayment are we talking about? We could pay it back in installments. No, I don't want anything to do with you, financially or personally. Consider this money a lesson, an expensive lesson, but apparently you wouldn't understand any other way. Tyler got up from the couch. Dad, are you really willing to lose your son over money? I'm not losing my son over money, I replied. I'm losing my son because of his choices, because he chose deception over honesty, theft over asking for help. So what now, Chloe asked. Are we just going to disappear from your life? Exactly. You choose a new place to live, preferably in another city. You change your phone numbers. You forget that you had a relative named Arthur Connor, and I forget that I had a son named Tyler. But the inheritance? Tyler began, then immediately fell silent, realizing how inappropriate it sounded. The inheritance? I laughed. Tyler, you want to discuss the inheritance after you've robbed the testator? What consistency in your greed? He blushed. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. Well, you don't have to worry. I'm leaving all my property to charities. The house, savings, valuables, everything will go to people who really need help, not steal it. Chloe started crying, but these weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of anger and disappointment that their plans had finally fallen apart. You're a cruel old man, she whispered through her tears. And you're greedy thieves, I replied calmly. At least I'm honest in my cruelty. Tyler took his wife by the arm. Let's go, Chloe. There's nothing left for us to do here. They headed for the exit. At the door, Tyler turned around. Dad, if you ever change your mind. I won't, I interrupted him. And don't call me Dad. I don't have a son. The door closed, and I was left alone in the house, which suddenly seemed huge and empty. I went to the window and watched them get into the car and drive away. Perhaps forever. A strange feeling came over me. On the one hand, justice had prevailed. The thieves had been punished. A lesson had been taught. My dignity had been restored. I had proven to them and to myself that 72 years of age was not a sentence to helplessness. On the other hand, I realized that I was completely alone. My only close relative had disappeared from my life, and it was unlikely that anyone else would take his place. Ahead of me lay years of loneliness, which would be brightened only by books, a few friends, and memories of better times. But I did not regret my choice. Dignified solitude is better than family relationships based on deception and theft. I preferred to be alone but honest with myself than surrounded by loved ones who saw me only as a source of money. In the evening, I sat in my chair with a cup of tea and reflected on my life. Yes, I lost my son, but I didn't lose myself. My self-esteem and my understanding of justice remained unchanged. I didn't let anyone turn me into a victim, and I didn't become an accomplice to theft by covering it up with family love. On the table were the documents I had shown Tyler and Chloe. Tomorrow I would take them to my lawyer, Marcus Green, and officially change my will. My property would indeed go to charities that help the elderly and orphan children. Let this money benefit those who really need support. Also tomorrow I will call the bank and change all the passwords and access codes to my accounts. Tyler will never again have the opportunity to steal a single dollar from me. Late in the evening, the phone rang. Tyler's number appeared on the display. I stared at the ringing phone without picking it up. The calls repeated several more times, but I did not answer. We had nothing left to talk about. When the calls finally stopped, silence fell over the house. But it was not the oppressive silence of loneliness, but the peaceful silence of justice. I had achieved my goal. I had shown that dignity and self-respect do not depend on age, and that justice can prevail even in family conflicts. As I went to bed, I felt satisfied with a job well done. My revenge was complete. The thieves got what they deserved, and I retained my dignity and independence. Ahead of me lay years of a lonely but honest life, and that suited me just fine. 72 years is not the end, but a new beginning. The beginning of a life without illusions, without false attachments, but with a clear understanding that justice is worth any sacrifice, even the most painful ones.